Welcome to Overtime on Inferno, your weekly roundup of all the big stories in CSGO. Quicker than Simple can throw his coach under the bus. Quick reminder, rate and review is the end of the episode. It really helps us. I'm Logan. This is Aizyesque. I'm back.
Hello. We missed you.
Whole
I had
live.
to host last week and it was very uncomfortable. I'd been working all day on Kato, got off and was like, it was like 4 a.m. for tea time. It was like midnight for me. Oh no, it was like 11 for me, I think. I was tired. I'd not done enough prep because I had been working. So I was like, and then I was like trying to explain to Twistzz, yeah, no, this is what we're going to talk about, tea time and Yumi. And Twistzz was like, nah, it's fine. Just hit us with just surprise us with questions. I'm like, brilliant.
Those are the favorite people to have on. The people that are just like, I'm game to talk about whatever. Let's just go. Yeah. I got COVID in 2023 somehow. So
I saw somebody today who was like, oh, I just got a message from somebody who said they had COVID when I saw them yesterday. I'm like, fantastic. Thanks for telling me. But I think I've had it too recently to get it again, so I should be okay.
Yeah, so I died all last week. So we're alive now.
Miserable, but it's so bad.
The first time I had it, it was like, oh, I felt like shit for a day. I was off of work for 3 days last week with it. Like, I had it bad.
The worst I had, the one time I had it, my throat felt like it was twice as narrow as it is.
Yeah.
Like, my throat was killing me. I was on like 4 packs of soothers a day. It was horrible.
So I guess the only benefit of it was that we got this. I got to listen to Overtime Inferno for the first time since I stopped editing this podcast.
Yeah,
because I listened to an entire episode about Asian Counter-Strike. I want to know what your favorite bits of this was. For anyone that didn't listen, Elliot talked with Tea Time and Yumi last week about just a giant thing of the current state of Asian Counter-Strike and why IHC is like now everyone's favorite team. And how we got to this point.
So the two bits that come to mind immediately, there was one where I'm pretty sure it was Yumi was just like, yeah, no, I feel like Annihilation's not even that good of an AWP domestically, which kind of got the feeling because a lot of his clutches were actually with rifles. And he's like, yeah, no, Annihilation's just not very good. Fantastic. And I loved Tea Time's idea of the AAA League right at the end, where he's like, America, Australia, and Asia, just go to LAN and have a big league, and that would be great fun.
I love it. That's great.
It'd be so chaotic.
So for more insights about Asian Counter-Strike, make sure you listen to last week's episode, which is Season 5, Episode 6. That'll be up forever, as podcast episodes generally are. But I want to get to the topic that you guys didn't get to cover last week, which was the big thing that happened in Poland.
Just very quickly, you saying... podcast episodes tend to be up forever. If you search hard enough, there is some almost like 7-8 years old maybe podcasts of mine that I did at university with a friend. I won't tell anyone the name because it's kind of embarrassing, but if you search hard enough, there are podcasts of me on the internet.
If you search hard enough, there's 2 episodes of a Counter-Strike podcast that appeared before this, which I'll say the name because
that's where we found you.
Yeah, called Binga Bangable, because Valve couldn't get their shit together, which was me and Nutzi, who later became our Valorant writer. Us doing 2 podcasts. The second episode of that podcast, we recorded the entire thing, and then I realized you couldn't hear my mic, so we re-recorded an entire podcast.
Wow.
To put something out. It was terrible.
Well, clearly it worked, because
we're here now.
Somehow Phil and Jacob found it, and were like, we want this guy to do the podcast with you. And I was like, yeah, wicked. Let's do it.
All right, let's talk about Kato. We're talking about you were there. We're going to talk about you being there, but I want to get to teams first. I want to start with G2. Obviously, they were the team that won the event.
The best team in the world, undoubtedly.
Yeah, they looked ridiculous. It feels like there's nothing to say because the answer is they are the best team in the world, and I think the only real thing I have here is why did it take them so long?
I have a feeling I said something. I definitely was pretty high on G2 in the last show of the year last year when we were like doing predictions for 2023, and I was like, because I kept saying G2 are going to win a major this year.
Yeah,
I thought it
a
would
lot
be
of
the
people
second major, but
I
can
mean,
you see them?
Katowice
Can you see them
just
losing
basically
a tournament at the moment? The
no.
only team who look close to them are Heroic.
Yeah, so but just quick down the list, and then I have like 3 teams I want to talk about. Right, so G2 first place looked really, really good. Heroic looked good through their
Heroic looked
portion.
phenomenal until they came
Really
up against
good.
G2. I mean, the game against G2 was a really good game.
The thing is like there was a lot of teams that looked really, really good. Liquid looked very good, surprisingly.
Liquid they won, but they didn't feel as convincing.
Liquid won, but they didn't feel convincing. But here's the thing: Liquid played against G2 and didn't totally embarrass themselves.
That's true.
Which I think is like your mark right now. And they played well against Vitality. And if we want to talk about something about Liquid, it's the exercising their demons for half a minute on overpass, on coming back after 12-0 start.
Yeah, that's why I didn't think they were that good. I remember now. It's because of that 12-0 start.
Like that 12-0 start was rough. But any other Liquid previously would have just sat there and took it and died, and they came back and win the map, right? Like that's some Yukindar influence right there.
After that game, I want to shout out Apex. A lot of players don't like really give shit loser interviews, and I don't blame them. If I had to do a loser interview, I'd struggle. But
yeah,
he gave long interview, he gave good interviews, and then he was the last person signing stuff from fans, apologizing to fans, talking to them this is my bad, this is what went wrong, blah blah blah. Just all round, just seemed like a good dude. And then later on, because in Kato everything's closed by 11, the only place left to eat was McDonald's. So I walked into McDonald's with some of the people I was with, and the whole Liquid and Vitality teams were there. And at one point we were sat next to some Vitality fans, and Apex just walked over and he talked to them in French. My French isn't very good, but I understood him saying "Je suis désolé," which I'm extremely sad. I'm very sad. And it's he really, it really fucking hurt him. And he made an effort to talk to fans about it and explain his point of view, which
nice guy Apex.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Navi considerably more in a couple minutes.
I have thoughts on Navi.
Outsiders looked fine. I know they finished playoffs, but I wasn't super huge into the Outsiders vibe in this event.
So what I will say is Outsiders are clearly back to where they were pre-major, which is top 8 team in the world. But I think people are sleeping on how difficult it actually was to beat Complexity at this event.
Yeah, so
in retrospect, beating Complexity 2-1 is a genuinely good result from outside.
We're going to talk a lot about Complexity. I want to brush past them for a minute. FaZe's best look in this event, I think, was Russell Van Delken on the desk during the playoffs.
Yeah, see, I think FaZe were good.
Super bad, but I thought Twistzz on the desk was great. And then I don't really want to talk about the rest of the teams here, other than IHC finishing in not last.
Respect.
Respect. Okay, so G2 was the best team. They only had the best team in the world. It looks like undisputed. And I think that everyone kind of expected that this was going to happen in a way.
I kind of thought Heroic might win the final. The way they dismantled Navi was terrifying. And I just thought their system might be too much for G2, but it was only really a matter of time before a team with Nico, Hunter, JKS, and Monacy started winning shit.
Yeah. I want to talk about a team that finished 13-16, which is Cloud9, which to me is my underwhelming team of the event.
Oh yeah, by some. The only other argument is Furia.
Yeah. The only
Furia you kind of expect to be underwhelmed.
Furia and NIP, I guess, are your two other.
NIP had a stand-in,
but Cloud9 did this whole move to try and make their team better, and you and I have been saying that it is at best a lateral move, right? it hasn't done anything yet.
Well, it has.
Well, it has the worst. Like,
I think somebody said to me, I can't remember who it was just like, if not before, after the Blast Major, Inters will be back in for Buster. And I'm like, yeah.
I think he'll be back in for Buster, but they have to do another move if they want to stay relevant.
Yeah, they really do. And it has to be Nathany. You can't replace Shiro or Axile. Yep. You're probably not going to replace Hobbit. It almost certainly is Nathany, which is a shame. But
yeah. But okay, so Cloud9, most underwhelming team in the major. Most out of nowhere team in the major. Why did I say the major? Out of nowhere team in Kato is Complexity. A team in which they've grinded their fucking asses off and respect to them. Completely disregarded for the last couple of months. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
so do you remember when this team was formed? We were both quite high on it.
Which part of this team was formed? Because
the core, like the four Americans.
So
Grim,
so
Floppy,
right when they
Fang.
joined Complexity.
Yeah, Grim, Floppy, Fang,
yeah.
But it was with Junior,
yeah.
And happy to admit I got it horrendously wrong on Junior, and largely we got it wrong.
I think everyone got it wrong on Junior, but.
No, some people would already decided he was shit and they were proven right. But finally, you're seeing why people were excited to see a team of Grim, Fang, and Floppy together.
Yeah.
You're finally seeing it. Like, Fang is a very solid floor player. Like, he's the new Rush. You know exactly what you're getting from Fang. He's got, tight mechanics, fearless. He can be a lockdown multi-kill player on TT side. Like, he rarely does a lot too wrong, and he's quite selfless. You've got Grim, who is the X Factor superstar player. Like, he's your Elise. Like, he gets his 20. He gets his 30 when he needs them. Like, he can do that. And then you have Floppy as the closer, your Nafly type player. Like, you do have the Elise Nafly type combo in Grim and Floppy. You've got the hard entry to go with them. And now with Holzerk, now that he's been playing 100 hours in the last week, they have an AWPer. And fuck me, was he good at this event. He was the top, I'm pretty sure in the play-in stage.
Yeah. Where they beat Permita and Ents, who we'll get to Ents later in the show. But
so, I'm pretty sure in the play-in stage, he won 9 clutches.
It's ridiculous.
And second place for clutches had won 5.
Yeah, that's like Brokey type numbers, right?
Yeah, he
was
winning every clutch. He was getting opening picks all the time. He was top frag in lobbies. He was a fucking nightmare to play against because he was an opener and a closer. Like, you didn't know where he was going to pop up. He could be hyper aggressive and he didn't seem to miss a single shot, or he could be the shutdown post-plan AWPer. He could actually do both. Where previously when I've seen Holzerk, he's been a great opener, but if he didn't get that opening pick, he kind of didn't do a whole lot. But he looked phenomenal. And that team then is like...
It's a totally different thing.
It's a totally different team.
You put them in a totally different conversation, right? Because we have talked about Floppy, Grim, Fang since this team. Like, that had to be good. And JT has proven his chops on many occasions in terms of calling. It was.
I have some concerns with JT, but
he is definitely not the worst IGL in the top 30.
No, that might be Nathany, honestly.
He's not the best, but you know what?
This poisoned me so much.
At least they're a service. At least JT's a serviceable IGL.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's not bad. My concerns would largely be to do with his mechanics, but. He's a decent IGL, yeah. He's not bad. Apex is pretty awful, isn't it?
But Holzerk just absolutely brought this team to a completely new level of...
Yeah, if we see that Holzerk some more, this team can be really good.
And looking at what they're doing, it didn't seem like somebody had to go nuclear. It always seemed like this...
It more felt like multiple players could go nuclear.
Yeah, it felt like they were winning despite players not doing that.
But it also felt like their players could. Like in the past, it's been like you would get the odd 30 bomb from Fang. You would see Grim pop off. You'd see Floppy pop off, but it always felt fleeting. Whereas this event, it was like Grim pops off one game, Holzerk drops like 30 the next game. You had Fang like locking down CT side, like 18 kills on CT side, like one game. It actually felt like there was. It felt like what I expected, which is a toolbox of players who could all take over the game, rather than it feeling like a toolbox of players who kind of weren't good enough.
This is a Moneyball team. This is a team that is more than the sum of their parts.
No, I don't think it is. I think that it used to just be worse than the sum of its parts. This is what the parts are capable of. This is what Grim can do. Like, this is what Grim can do to good teams. He can fucking rip them apart. Like, this is what Floppy can do. This is what Holzerk can do. For ages, like, we both know, because we were both high in the scene, we knew that these players were better than what they were showing. And we've finally actually seen all 4 of their, like, non-in-game leader players looking like the players we expected them to. And, like, if they can find a level to be better than the sum of their parts, they will be a top 10 team, because the parts in this team are fantastic. It's just, for whatever reason, it hadn't clicked until now, and they've just played so much in the last few weeks that they're actually at a level now where it's like, yeah, no, this team can fuck. This team can hang.
I want to move to a team that has previously been described as the best team in the world at a given point in the last 2 years. It'll be Navis Vincere.
Yeah.
They ended 3rd, 4th, which on surface totally reasonable. Made playoffs, right? Was able to take down outsiders to get into the semis, but this team for a while has looked like a shell of its former self.
They're they're back to just being what Navi always were.
I think my bigger problem is an article that was released 4 days ago.
Yeah.
Which was the HLTV interview with Simple, in which there was just throwing Bit under the bus, throwing
Blade under the bus,
saying, I don't know, you need to ask our coach. So the big quote was, especially on Mirage, there have been some role. So this is an interview saying, especially on Mirage, there have been some role changes where, for example, NPL is in a difficult position in connector, which is generally the most active position. There was a swap between Bit and Perfecto as well, as Bit is more of an egg now. Can you elaborate on why these changes were made and why your youngest and least experienced player is in the hardest position on the map? Simple's response, I don't know, you should ask our coach, because I ask myself some of the same questions. I don't understand why, never mind.
So, my thoughts were, I remember during this game, that the interview, I turned to the guy I was sat next to, and I said, why is Perfecto on short, Bit on B, and NPL in connector? I remember distinctly going, what the fuck is going on? Because this is not normally. This is not, like, don't get me wrong, Bit should probably be an anchor rifler. He has insane mechanics. He's not always the brightest player in the world, but he should be an A-site anchor. He should be on the bigger site because it lets him flex his mechanics more. Like, that should be his role. You can play him connector, you could probably figure it out, but connector is more, you want a more experienced player. I think Electronic is a connector player anyway.
Yeah, but
what I figure is, yeah, like, I could see Bit being good at B anchor, but so is Perfecto. Like, Perfecto on short, I don't hate it, but it just seemed really, like, this team wasn't built to have Bit as the small site anchor and NPL as a star rifler. That's not how this team was designed.
Yeah.
That isn't how it should be. Like, and that doesn't make much sense to me. So, I can, like, first of all, great question, because it's exactly what I was thinking watching the game. Second of all, I can understand why Simple's frustrated, and especially if he himself realizes the same thing, and he's like, he doesn't agree with his coach. So I kind of get his frustration. And then people are going to say, oh, you shouldn't throw your coach under the bus, shouldn't air your dirty laundry. Yeah, fine. Simple's a passionate guy. Simple is not the kind of player who's happy to finish third to fourth. He's a fucking winner, man. He's the best player of all time. He might not have been at this event, and maybe he should take some responsibility for that as well. I'm not going to disagree, but I can understand him being frustrated with his teammates and with his coach, because clearly there's something not right in this team.
Yeah, and we don't have like a super better answer of what it is, right?
But we're also talking about a team who finished third to fourth. They lost in the semi-finals of Katowice, and then we're like talking like there's some crisis team.
And the problem is that we know what the ceiling for this team is. We've seen the light, we've seen the high points of what this team is, and anything but that high point, everything but a Navi dominant era or a team, an event in which Navi looks like is reasonable that they could win, is a loss for them.
Yeah. I agree. But this is also what Navi always were. Navi were always the team that you talked about as a dark horse. They could win this event, but they're so inconsistent. And so many times through the years, I've seen this Navi where they smash everyone in groups, get to semi-finals and lose 2-0. Like so many times, I've seen this from every iteration with Flamey, with Guardian. And this is just what Navi always were. That's why when they were so dominant, it was like a relief thing. It was like, after all these years, Navi are finally the best team in the world, undisputed, unbeatable. And then, boom, it happened. The Russian-Ukraine war happened. And now they're trying to start again with a different roster. And
yeah, there's a lot there. All right, so we've got one more thing I want to talk about. It's actually two. So let's talk about being in person at Kato.
Yes.
I want to talk about the air quality.
I can't say I noticed it, but I know other people did.
As I say, as someone who is very plugged in on the internet, I saw a lot of mentions about air quality issues.
So Maui Snake's thing on ZywOo being shit when the air quality's bad, I think he's just trying to hint to ESL to stop having events in Katowice. That's my take on what he's doing. ZywOo's shit because he's always not as good in playoffs. And Apex is a terrible in-game leader. Kato itself, it's a really odd city because it's not meant for tourists. And it's especially not meant for esports tourists.
Yet we go there every year.
But it kind of is now because people go there every year. Like, there's a bar that a lot of people go to, that is just like a gaming themed bar. Like there's Mario Kart and Tekken and stuff you can play on the computers on the consoles. All the drinks are like, oh, there's a fire potion drink, there's an invisibility potion drink, there's a fucking solid snake drink. Like, so clearly they know, and I'm pretty sure the only reason people go to Katowice every year is for IAM. So they're trying to sort of rebrand themselves as like a city of culture and getting into the arts and the music. But it's like, you go 100 meters from the city center and it's properly Eastern European. It's properly Polish. I quite like that. I think it's quite charming. I think it's charming to be in a place where you're almost not meant to be.
Why the hell would the multi-billion-dollar esports high technical industry go to the small mining city in Poland? That's weird and stuff on its own. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like,
why does this giant
anyone in my family in the last 100 or 200 years has been to Katowice? Polish people don't go to Katowice. I explained that, and this probably won't land for you because you won't know, but it's like if Sunderland or Middlesbrough had a big baseball tournament every year.
No, we have that. We have Williamstown in Pennsylvania is known for one thing and one thing only: it's the Little League World Series.
Amazing.
Every year, Little League World Series. Everyone knows about Williamstown because the Little League World Series, but no one goes to Williamston other than to go to the Little League World Series.
Yeah,
that's it. That's the only reason.
Sunderland or Middlesbrough like having it would be even weird because it would be people flying in from the US to England to watch a baseball game in a place where like English people don't want to be. Never mind like tourists. It's really
So weird.
like it's really odd, but that I find that quite uniquely charming. Like, yeah, okay, you go to Cologne and it's a more metropolitan city. It's it's more places to eat and drink, but it's like, yeah, but it feels a bit fake because they know people are coming to Cologne. Whereas Katowice feels like it's only just realised that people come to Katowice to watch esports. It's quite charming.
I want to talk about one of the teams that was pointedly not at IEM Katowice because they suck. But the question that was posed to us via one of our crew members was, "They suck?" ?
Was this Astralis?
This is Astralis.
Yeah, they beat Aurora in overtime to win some event I can't remember the name of.
CCT.
Oh, it was a CCT. Okay.
It was a CCT. CCT North Europe Series 3. But to get there, they beat Eyeballers, 9, and Copenhagen Flames. In Blast groups, they beat NIP and OG. There is an argument to be made. I won't be making it. There's an argument to be made that Device is back and that this team looks like it may actually be okay again.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not convinced.
I have to say it on the matter.
Went to overtime in the final against Aurora. I don't know. We'll see. Not convinced the team is good again.
Just everyone keep your eyes on it. It's I think we're a little too early to be able to put a timestamp on when we say Astralis is good again.
I'd like to talk about something else at Impact, Katowice, which was Impact, which I actually watched a decent amount of, because it's more interesting than Astralis.
Understandable.
Yeah, at least they were at Katowice.
Hold on, before we talk about this, I swear we are still working on getting someone who knows more about Impact than both of us on.
Yeah, well,
we have not forgotten about it.
We're actively working on it. We do want to get somebody in to talk a little bit about it. But I actually watched quite a few games because of the way it was, the timing was, a lot of the time it was on earlier than the stage games in the Spodek. And it was pretty fun. Like, I quite enjoyed there's so much you can tell that they've obviously picked up pretty quickly and that they've obviously copied or taken ideas from like the top level of Counter-Strike and implemented it, but sometimes it feels like the coordination isn't quite there, which of course is normal. I mean, like one of the teams, Saints.
Saints is like that's NA. Team. Yeah, it's a mixed NA team.
But they basically, one of them had like 3 jobs and still played 4 to 6 hours of Counter-Strike a day and qualified for this event. I'm like, mad fucking respect.
Yeah.
Because that's dedication. But Enigma, as they always do, won, but Furia pushed them really close in the semi-final. Like, I think closer than they ever have done before. You could tell Enigma are the best team. Their setups are clean. They have really nice crosshair placement on a couple of their riflers, and Anna just takes over games with the AWP.
I want to talk about Impact in context of the major for a minute.
Okay.
Because in North America, we have Evil Geniuses who have 3 teams, and only one is allowed to participate in the RMRs. So it's the EG main team. And so you don't get to see EG Black and EG White throughout the open qualifiers and stuff. So I found out yesterday that Furia's female team actually was invited to the closed qualifier for South America.
Right.
But they can't go because of Furia.
Makes sense.
Because it's 2 teams. And over in Asia,
HSG
got an invite and will be going to compete in the RMR.
HSG, I watched one of their games, and their in-game leader is a player called GFI, who is a very good player, but quite clearly calls around herself. It's like a bit blame Effie back when he was on Endpoint.
Blame F was never on Endpoint.
Was he
Complexity,
not?
Heroic.
Before Complexity, I swear he was on it. He was definitely
Heroic.
He was on a UK team at one point.
Blame F?
I'm going to look it up. I'm 90% sure.
Okay.
And he basically just called the entire game around himself.
Well, you're
ragging.
looking this up. I want to give a quick rundown of what the things that happened yesterday, which was Tuesday, February 14th. Because a lot of things happened yesterday involving the North American RMR.
Oh, it was Epsilon. It was Epsilon, not Endpoint.
Okay. I want to talk about the North American RMR really quickly. So, as I think is pretty well known, we're decent friends with the folks over at Dust 2, so they invited me on their stream yesterday. Player got banned for cheating midway through. The tournament started, the open qualifier started at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Jobs in the U.S. generally go until 5 p.m. They had set up on the schedule for yesterday the first 3 matches, and then best of 3s would take place the next day, which is today. Problem is that Open Qualifier 2 starts today, originally at 4 p.m., so they had to play those best of 3s before Open Qualifier 2 started, so that way if you lost the best of 3 to qualify for the closed qualifier, you could play an Open Qualifier 2. So noon today, or 40 minutes ago as we're recording this, is the start time for best of 3s to make the closed qualifier. So if you have a job or something, you're SOL. If you are on the West Coast, you have a match at 9 in the morning.
Probably even earlier than that, no?
No, it's 9 in the morning.
Okay.
The anti-cheat was in Portuguese.
Normal.
It was run on Gamers Club, which, while is a great choice for South America, they have great infrastructure there and stuff, the North American infrastructure is just non-existent, and their times for yesterday were in Eastern Time, not Eastern Standard Time, which is the Brazil time zone for Rio de Janeiro, which is 1 hour earlier, or 1 hour later than Eastern Standard Time, which is the earliest time zone that other people will be in. Basically, all the times are off, and you never saw a local time anywhere, or a time zone. So if you were in Nova Scotia, you were on time, but other than that, you weren't. And also
you'd assume it was wrong anyway, even if you were in Nova Scotia.
And also Mythic qualified for the closed qualifier.
Mythic tend to do all right in these things. And they do practice probably more than most NA teams.
Well, it also seems that Nifty's team called Formula
is
about to is in the best of 3 like right now for qualifying.
Adam and I, Adam, photographer at TLDR, went down the Nifty rabbit hole the other day because somebody told me to look at his bio, and his Twitter bio is very odd.
Yeah. So all of that happened last night, including the player getting banned partway through. Absolutely hilarious night. All right, we have
to go back to EG. Their women's team, was the team who lost to Saints to qualify, who didn't qualify to Katowice. EG signed a team that is just worse than a mixed team. That's not a good sign. Nigma Galaxy are far and away the best team, but now Fury are starting to look like they know what they're doing. But in the game between each other, they both allowed through their normal permabans and won their normal permabans, which is really cool because they both was I think one team doesn't play. Oh, I'm gonna forget. I can't remember which one it is, but they both allowed through their normal permabans, had them picked against them, and won them, which is cool as fuck. It's a solid standard, but
okay,
I do think HSG will struggle in that qualifier because they're so reliant on when an in-game leader calls around themselves, it's usually a bad sign for the other players that they're not
super
quite good enough, and that does tend to be the issue with Impact teams, in that the player base is a lot smaller, so there are going to be players who aren't as good in your region who you just have to take because there's not many other options. And that's not a slight anyone in particular, but that is when the player base is smaller, there's going to be a slightly lower level. A lot of them have slightly unbalanced, this player is so much better than this one. It does happen.
All right, we've got a bunch of quickfire stories today. So a new case got released a week and a day ago to Counter-Strike, and it only took them about 4 days to find out that we have copyrighted and stolen art again. So
Pay your artists, kids.
not just pay your artists. Like,
Well,
yes,
don't steal their work.
don't steal someone else's work. Like how we did this once already, and there was a giant scandal behind it. And Valve is finally letting people like design skins again that have not designed a skin before and get them into the game. And how are we doing this again? Like, how is this what we've gotten to again? That we're back to plagiarism.
Yeah, it's not ideal, is it? It's not a good look. I'm also like, I obviously feel bad for the guy who it's happened to. But
Yeah,
like, I do struggle to care. Like, yeah, it's really bad, and he shouldn't do it. And I hope the guy gets compensated, which I'm sure he will.
Yeah.
But I already care very little about cases. What was interesting is quite how much Valve make from cases. Like, I figured it out.
So I want to talk about this. We wrote about this in the newsletter this week, which, if you didn't read about it there, I'm surprised you're here. So
Real.
basically, a Redditor figured out that Valve sees 20 million cases open per month. And there's no cut on those at all because
they own Steam.
So for $250 a pop per key, they're getting in like, what is it, $20 million or something like that?
Yeah, 25 million.
No, it's 40 million euros a month.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, because it's times 2.5. That's a shit ton.
That's a lot.
That's like $500 million a year from cases alone.
Which is like a mind-melting amount of money. I obviously knew it was going to be a lot, but
Yeah.
I've never really figured it would be that much. I don't know many people who open cases regularly, but I suppose it only takes if 1% of people, like, it's probably a case where, like, you know, the 80-20 rule, where 80% of people do 20% of something. There's probably 20% of people that are doing 80% of the case openings.
I mean, think about it this way: if there's like unique, 10 million Counter-Strike players every month or something like that.
Yeah, I guess that's
true.
That
means that on average, that every Counter-Strike player is opening 2 cases a month. Like,
yeah, and I guess there's probably people who open like 1 or 2 a week.
I was gonna say, I probably open like 6 a month or something like that. Because
you open 6 cases a month.
I do this. I used to open a lot more, but I stopped doing that, and so if I get dropped a case, I open the case, and that's it. I don't go out of my way.
At most 1 every month, 2 months.
But my point is like me, who opens like, let's say 5, right?
Yeah,
that's easy taking up for your lag.
Yeah, exactly.
And even it's not really lag. If you open 2 a month, right, then you're hitting average, right?
Yeah, I get you.
So if we're talking unique players, so it's a metric shit ton, but honestly, it kind of seems a little low to me. Like,
yeah, there's probably a lot of people who are very casual players as well who don't open any, and then there's going to be.
And then there's like
the skin trader
and
types,
like, and like Aizyesque and like Zypel, who are opening like hundreds a day and that kind of stuff. So
$40 million a month, and for what?
Yeah, we get Ancient and Anubis, and like we don't get a bigger prize.
Inferno's still in the map pool. The Galil's been overpowered for fucking months. I'm not going to get into an Inferno tirade now. I just know that Harry's run the numbers, and it's not looking good for Inferno.
Love it.
He's
Okay,
run the numbers on how many saves there are on average per house.
No. Okay. I gotta have a conversation. We talked about this on Dust 2 stream last night on how we can make things more even across the side.
Remove Inferno. Maps shouldn't be T-sided.
And how we want to kill game time, and it's gotten to a point where Evil Cat, who is a former Counter-Strike caster, currently Valorant caster, made a tweet about a Valorant thing.
I saw Riot responded with
the official Riot Games account responded with, "It's game time. We've gone too far. We need to get rid of it. It's done. It's killed. Get it out."
But the problem is that Jamie is objectively correct, even though he's playing like a complete wet end. He's objectively right to do so.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. We need to change it so that way we can kill James time. That's it. That's all I care about now. Okay. Rosters.
Yeah, the easiest way to do that is to remove Inferno. It's the map with the most saves.
Do it. We have a ton of roster moves that happen really, really quickly. So, Sprout plus Barry minus refresh on the IGL roll. Barry is refreshed.
They trialed what's his name?
They trialed someone else like 2 minutes beforehand.
Fade or something like that. It's a 4-letter word. I can't remember his name. He was on Fnatic Rising.
I'm finding out. Hold one moment, please.
They trialed him for like one best of 3 after kicking the player and then just immediately.
So they benched Zyphoon. They trialed Maze as the IGL.
Maze, that's it. Yeah.
And now they're trialing Barry as an IGL. Basically, they think refresh is better using a role that's not the IGL, which don't totally disagree, but
also Zyphon was good.
Yeah, I was say I think Zyphon is your best player there, so
he's not their best player, but actually his ratings in recent these aren't pretty.
He's definitely one of the better players.
I don't know. His ratings of the last like 5 or 6 series are ugly. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Okay. Oh.
Zyphon's good, but he's not as good as Lamb because he's not as good as Stair.
Yeah. And then we have the big stuff.
Yeah.
So Big Searson seems that he'll be leaving. He's benched himself. And so the Academy offer, which is hyped, will come up. So Big is currently now Tapson, Keto, Fab, and Crimbo hyped. Searson on the bench. In addition with all of this, Tizian has said he's coming back. Didn't say he's coming back to Big, but I think he is on Big payroll in some way, shape, or form. And so he will be coming back to Counter-Strike. And Sin is still on Big Academy, which in itself is a sin.
I would just like to address anyone who is thinking about starting a HLTV thread or tweeting about Smooyah going to Big.
Just stop, please.
Just fucking don't do it. Just please don't do it. It's not going to happen.
Wait,
they clearly want to stay German because otherwise they'd have kept Jantares. He's a word I won't use on a podcast because that's not a good look. He keeps getting kicked from teams. Like he's having to start his own like unsigned team that are okay. He's not good enough for tier 1 anyway. This is probably going in too harsh, but I'm just fucking tired of hearing, oh, they should get Smooyah like it's still fucking 2019 and people still think he's good. Stop talking about it.
And even with all of that, the Big Academy lineup is actually really fucking good.
Yeah, well, they're bringing up the AWPer, I guess.
They are. Yeah. So, like, do that. Please. Like, you have an AWPer in-house, and the Big Academy lineup has not been a slouch.
Yeah. Well, that's what they're doing, right?
Yeah. So, like, let them cook.
Yeah, see what happens.
All right.
Speaking
of none of that, actually. 1 win.
What a segue. Speaking of complete non sequiturs.
Speaking of literally nothing to do, 1 win. Brought in Hooch as the coach, Boomich as an IGL, and Nickelback. They brought in Forrester as well. It's a gaming roster now.
It's gaming. I fucking love Hooch. I love the Hooch picker. Hooch Boomich. That's a duo I'm ready for.
Forrester and Nickelback and Hooch are all straight X like Entropic.
Forrester's a geezer as well. Forrester
Boomich obviously was a good IGL and had out of server issues.
I think Boomich, a thing that people sleep on with Boomich is he's actually quite good mechanically.
He's just a good player. Like,
yeah, he is a good player. Like,
right?
He doesn't, and the sort of Russian style of having the coach who's basically the in-game leader and the in-game leader is just a puppet, what Blade does.
Yeah,
with Boomich. Hooch might be the leader of this team, where Boomich has the same role he did on Navi, which should suit him.
And Deco has been really, really good on 1 win.
He's also incredibly toxic.
I have no comment on the matter. I have no information.
I've not really watched much of his streams or anything, but he streams all the time, and apparently he is a bastard. He's like a proper, like, he had beef with Sticko over something. He's quite famously difficult to work with, but he's really good.
All right. 2 more rosters. We'll do OG really quickly because that doesn't require a huge amount of talking about. So Nexa is stepping down temporarily for some personal reasons. So Nico, who is somehow still on their roster, he was benched and just still somehow benched, will be playing during the RMR as a sub. And then the last team we would need to talk about is Ents, which has its own fun, which is benching Valde due to differences in play style, also known as not enough firepower. They are... Wait, let me get through the whole thing, and then we'll talk about... We'll talk about it. All right. They are bringing in Henu from their academy team, which if you actually knew the Ents had an academy team, I'd be surprised. I did. And then it sounds like there's some small reasons, right, that Nertz, who is an Israeli player from Endpoint who had been previously targeted by Ents last summer when they picked up Valde, has missed the major RMR qualifier with Endpoint for personal reasons. So there's some tinfoil hat conspiracy theory that they're trying to pull Nertz over, and Nertz had to sit himself out of the qualifier to make sure that he could play with Ents.
It wouldn't be the first time, given... I'm pretty sure it happened at Endpoint before. You know when... I won't get into it.
I mean, here's the thing. There have been 3 Israelis, and they've either all gone through Endpoint or Ents. Yeah. This one, Nertz going over, would be the first to go through Endpoint and Ents. And the other 2 are pretty goddamn good.
I think it would make sense. It probably makes sense. I remember when the Valde move was announced, and it was like, I thought I understood, which is that he would actually kind of say Hades roles, or a Sun Pius would be the star, and more like Sphinx's roles. I wonder if that's actually kind of true, and Valde's like, no, I should be a star player, but I also don't think he's that type of player. But I am starting to wonder if Valde's actually that good.
You're starting to?
Well, like, is he just a complete myth? And I hate saying this because I liked Valde. I loved him when he was on North. But every team he's on is a bit of a shit show, and he sort of leaves inconspicuously every time.
Yeah, it always feels like there's this, like, the promise of Valde, and then the actual... It's like, Mom, we have Valde at home.
Yeah, it's kind of like... Although, to be fair, Diho was kind of like that before Ents as well, where it's like, we were always told he was really good. Obviously, Valde is a slightly different level, but like...
we were always told Diho was good, and he was never on an actual team other than that weird Virtus Pro mix.
Yeah.
That was like post the plow, where they said we're going to do young people, but also for some reason keep Bialy or Snacks or Pasha. It was a weird lineup, right? And we hadn't seen him on a tier 1 team really until Ents.
Yeah. No, that's true.
But we've seen Valde on...
I don't know, man. I'm not convinced, like, that Valde is actually any good. It's weird because he clearly is, but he seems to just have an issue being on and staying on consistently good teams. I'm pretty sure he pissed some people off at North, or was pissed off at North and left. He's never got that call up to Astralis that it seemed like he was going to get. And you watch him, and he's clearly good, but he isn't all that consistent. Every team he's on is kind of mediocre. I wonder if there's like maybe an ego thing, which is why, like, a difference in opinion on how to play the game. Like, they want him to be like a glorified support player. I think he might just be a bit of a myth. The idea of Valde is always better than what Valde actually is.
Yeah. And on that disappointment, we're going to end today. Quick announcement for what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. In the road up to the ARM... What?
It's subject to change.
Subject to change. Yeah. In the road up to the RMRs, we're going to try and get people on to talk about regions specifically. So you have a good primer guide on heading into the RMR, what things will look like. We covered Asia last week. We're going to try and get a group on from OS, a group on from Europe, a group on from South America, and a group on from North America. So that way you can have your best primer for all the RMRs in one place. So hopefully we'll be here next week with one of those regions. If we're not, we'll start the week after. We have a lot of regions to get through, and the RMRs, although they start at the beginning of April, that's sooner than you think. So, thank you so much for listening. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Logan Remhab, at Aizyesque, and at RetailDR, and we will be back again next week.
Goodbye, everyone.